Think about it. Think about it. Think about it.
And welcome back to High School Basketball Weekly. Tim Murray alongside of Rick Bua. And Rick, we enter now the second full season of this high school basketball season with a lot of action by all the teams, and we're going to cover it all right here this week on High School Basketball Weekly. And Rick, we're going to start off with boys action, and specifically Mount Greylock, who picked up their first win of the season.
Yeah, as you remember, Tim, they're a very young team. I'm probably going to talk about this just for a few weeks on this show, and then hopefully not have to keep talking about it. But Coach Bob Thistle, in his final year last year with the Mountie boys, had an extremely talented senior-oriented team.
Right.
And so we knew there was going to be a rebuild. Coach Thistle has moved out of the area and moved on to new things, and so we have a new coach over there, and he's got his work cut out for him. I really think, you might hear say this in a little while with some other teams, that there are total rebuilds going on here with the teams that we cover in Northern Berkshire, on a few of them anyway. So it's going to take some time. There won't be any super positive results this year, even though I think what the coaches are going to try to do is try to keep their teams progressing as the season goes on and get better. And I think you're going to see that with most of the teams. With the Mounties, they did at least pick up their first win. They're 1-2 right now, 1-0 in the league because they did beat a league team, Franklin Tech, 66-47. And Noah Kane Smalls led the way with the Mountie boys with 20 points. Des Cobb had 15, and Judge Martin had 10. So those are the three kids, I think, Tim, if you can agree, we're going to probably give them the scoring that they need this year.
Right, I agree with you, Rick. It's early on. You can kind of see where Greylock is going. It is a rebuilding year. Those young gentlemen that you just talked about, they're going to be the nucleus for Greylock this year, and we're going to see. It's going to be interesting to see how this young team comes along as the year goes along. McCann Tech, they had a nice win against Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion, and they were led by Walt Mazza and Jake Holland, and they're getting a lot out of Walt Mazza early on here.
Yeah, and Walt came on really, really strong last year, and he and Jake Holland were their leading scorers. So Coach Bullitt had he knew he had the two leading scorers back this year. Right. Holland is a senior, his brother is a sophomore, and so with Walt Mazza, he's probably it's going to be the 1-2 punch for the Hornets this year. They do have a cast of other kids, especially Eric Rougeau, that's coming on really, really strong. And they won that ball game, Tim, that you talked about, 57-23 last Friday. They pulled away in the second quarter. They outscored Pioneer Valley 23-4 to take a pretty huge lead, 31-11 at the half. But it didn't go so well for them down at Mount Everett, and that's a team that they should be able to compete with. And I think when Mount Everett comes to North Adams, it's going to be a little different. They seem to struggle a little bit when they go to Sheffield, and they lost by 20 points, 59-39. Again, Walt Mazza led the way with 12. Eric Rougeau added 9. So those were the two top scorers. Unfortunately for the Hornets, they were outscored in all 4 quarters. So it wasn't one of those games where they just didn't have it either the first half or the second half. They just probably were just off last night a little bit. But Coach Bullitt will get those kids back online. I say this over and over again on this show. I like the league that they're in, and they'll be very competitive. And I'm not going to predict a Hornets win versus Mount Everett in North Adams, but I will tell you it will be a much closer ball game. McCann plays so well on their home floor.
Right.
So they are 2-1 right now, but they'll be okay.
Right. A team we don't talk a lot about because we concentrate on Northern Berkshire squads, but we want to take a moment to talk about them, Rick. The Wacona Warriors, they stand at 1-3 in the early season. They play some really tough teams, but I'll tell you, they are getting some incredible efforts out of Pat McLaughlin.
Oh, Pat McLaughlin, my goodness gracious. You and I have covered him the last couple of years, and He was fun to watch, especially the games that we did down in Cheshire against Hoosick Valley, when Coach Belcher had that 1-2 punch of Brady Colvert and Pat McLaughlin. And Pat he's been like the second leading scorer the last couple of years, but he's kind of played in the shadow of the 1,000-point scorer, Calvin. So he just had an incredible start of the season, even though they're 1-3. And of course, they moved them out of the league with Hoosick Valley and Monument Mountain, and moved them down a little bit to a little tougher league, still in D4, of course. But you know, he scored 31, I think, against Drury, and we talked about that on our previous shows. In a loss, and this week they picked up their first win at Commerce, 73-50. He scored 45 points, which Coach Belcher was quoted in the iBerkshires and in the Eagle. He believes it's a school record for single game scoring. So that was pretty incredible. Then they lost to Chicopee with him scoring 24. So he's it right now. I think that's the one thing Coach Dustin Belcher, probably lacks, other than a little bit of experience, is the score.
Right.
So, but anyway,
and he's
good for him.
And no question, Pat McLaughlin has to be considered one of the best offensive players in high school in Western Massachusetts.
Absolutely.
At any division. Another team that features an outstanding player, the Monument Mountain Spartans. They're off to a great start, Rick. They're undefeated after three games, and they are led by Khalil Carlson, and he is another outstanding offensive player.
Yeah, congratulations to him, by the way. He just scored his 1,000th point last week, and he's a senior, but he and Manny Brown are like the 1-2 punch in Berkshire County, or one of them. There's one down in Cheshire we'll talk about later, but you know, they're having a great season. I really have high hopes for them this year with all the returnees they have coming back. Coach Randy Colas has got a really good boys team down there. He scored 27 against East Hampton in a blowout win, and took care of South Hadley 80-53. He had 30 there. So, you know, if we did a player of the week for all of Berkshire County, he'd be right in there with Pat McLaughlin. So we'd have to flip a coin for that one. But.
Absolutely, Rick. I mean, those two players are so talented. It really, if you get an opportunity to our viewers out there to catch either of these teams during the course of the season, you won't be disappointed by the talent and skill of Pat McLaughlin and Khalil Carlson. That's for sure. Another team with a very talented offensive player, as you just alluded to, Rick, down in Cheshire at Hoosick Valley. Hoosick Valley Hurricanes, Coach Robinson's team, undefeated here so far at 3-0, and they're being led by their all-around scoring forward, Frank Field.
Yeah, and one of the things we didn't do this year, Tim, that we have done in past seasons on this program is do a preseason all Berkshire pick. But the two young men from South County that we just named, McLaughlin and of course Carlson, would be on there, and so would Frank Field be right at the top there. Just an impressive young man. The way he presents himself on the basketball court as a leader, and I've said this over and over again that I saw him as a 10th grade leader, much less what he's going to do this year or what he did last year.
Right.
I know the knee has kept him down or at least quiet at times, but he's pretty healthy this year, I believe, and they're off to a great start. The Hurricanes are. They defeated Bay State Academy on the road, 84-52. They jumped right out to a quick 22 lead and really never looked back. They led 47-22 at the half and 63-35 after 3. Frank did lead the way with 22. Trevor Moynihan and Cornell Bradley each scored 14, and Joey McGovern 9, Adam Wicks 8, Matt Woodick 7, Will Hake 6. So I think that the kids we don't talk a lot about would be kids like Matt Woodick and Will Hakes.
Right.
But they're going to be a very big part of that program, especially with Cam Kastner out this season with that shoulder. And so, but it just goes to show already that it's a different nucleus, different chemistry in that team, Tim. And so Joey McGovern is going to score, and he's going to play great basketball for Coach Robinson. But it doesn't have to be him and Frank every night, because they've got kids that can step up and score, and they're all going to contribute.
And, you talk about that. They're off to a 3-0 start. Court. They've got a big game tonight versus Belchertown, which will be a real test. Hoosick Valley at home. But another player you're seeing, I'm watching the box scores, getting more and more time and doing better and better, an 8th grader, Trevor Moynihan.
Yeah, and he's very impressive. And, you just said to our viewers out there, Tim, if you get an opportunity to watch Carlson and McLaughlin, Monument Mountain, and Wacona in any game that they play this year, he's absolutely right. You have to do that. But if you get a chance, catch a Hoosick Valley game, and don't wait for the end of the season when Drury goes to Cheshire to play that game. Go and see this young man. I just love. I would go to the games that we did in Cheshire early, Tim, so I could see the entire JV game to watch him play last year. And I like the way Coach Robinson is bringing him along. I've seen that young man out and about outside of school. I've seen him at Weems men's basketball games, just observing and learning, and he's going to be a great player. And as you said, 8th grade. So
a lot of years.
he's not even a first, as we consider a first year, a 9th grader now. But he plays with confidence out there. And when you have an 8th grader, and we haven't said this in a long time, we really haven't covered an 8th grader that has been or can be as potent as Moynihan can be.
Well, but you talk about youth, Rick, and we talked about this the last couple of weeks right here on High School Basketball Weekly. You talk about the Drury Blue Devils. This is a young team that's rebuilding, and Coach Reset has this team firing early on here with all cylinders, and he has mentioned that he sees room for improvement with this young Blue Devil squad, but they stand at 3-1, and they have some really nice young players on this squad.
They do. They're very young. They have one senior, Dante Dillard, who's has been outstanding so far this year. I think if you ask Coach Reset if that he would be 3-1 at this part of the season, I think he would take that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Give or take Greenfield versus Wacona. I know they were both pretty close ball games, but he's off to a really, really good start. And these young players are really helping him out a lot. We'll talk about the Greenfield game first, Tim. That was their Drury's first loss. They lost that one at home at the Buckyborough Gym, 68-59. It was close all the way through. They just sputtered a little bit.
Yep.
It was all about turnovers. The unofficial total that I had heard was possibly as high as 29 turnovers in the ball game. So with a young team and with some growing pains, that's going to happen. But they're going to be fine. But in that loss, the positives were that the Blue Devils had 3 players in double figures. Dante Dillard did lead the way with 21. Sam Mormon had 16, and Miles Beauchamp had 13. So usually that's a nice recipe for a victory. Yeah. In this particular case, no shame in losing to Greenfield. This is the team that Drury battled last year, home and away, and in the Western Mass Class D or Class C, and I'm not sure I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was C. But they won the Western Mass title over them last year, so they brought back, from what I understand, the majority of their team.
Right.
And I think Coach Reset let those kids know that they were going to be in for a battle. But they got back on the winning track over in Williamstown as they took on the Mounties and won that one 64-33. Again, they got balanced scoring. This time it was Dillard leading the way with 15. Freshman point guard Jorge Bond with 14. Sam Mormon and Miles Beauchamp each had 13. Junior Colin Daly added 6 off the bench. So, he's going, right now he's going 7 deep, sometimes 8. But those kids are in pretty good shape for this time of year.
Right.
And they're going to have to put some minutes on the floor, the kids with the experience. But they're doing okay. They're going to at Maher. That'll be a test for them. They're going to be right in the mix of things in that league. Pioneer Valley's doing okay already. Maher's usually pretty tough. Frontier's always got a nice team. Greenfield's already beaten Drury, so it's going to be a tough one. But I think they're up to the task.
I think they are too, and I think one of the keys thing is getting people, young players, for Coach Reset, who demands such defensive intensity. It's tough for young players to get used to that intensity, but as the season goes along, he brings his teams along defensively. Coach Reset does an excellent job at that, and I think you're going to see this team to continue to improve, especially on the defensive end. And that leads us to our player of the week on the boys' side. And our first player of the week is right here, the senior guard for the Blue Devils, Dante Dillard.
Dante came on really strong last season, towards the end of the season especially, got a lot of playing time. Kind of played a little bit in the shadow like Sam Mormon did last year of Amont Dave, and especially a great scorer, Louis Gelati. And so Dante Dillard, as the senior leader, knows his role, and he's producing. He's doing a great job out on the floor, all around in all aspects of the game, and the points are there, the leadership is there, and first player.
Right, and well deserved, and he's providing a lot of leadership and a lot of offensive output for a young Blue Devil squad.
Yep.
So congratulations to Dante Dillard, our boys high school player of the week. On the girls' side, Rick, again, a lot of action as we get through this second full week of the season. We'll start out with McKeon and Rick. They have yet to win a game at home. They've yet to win a game this season. They stand at 0-2, but they've had some bright spots along the way.
Yeah, they lost to Ludlow in their most recent game, 44-23. They were led by Hannah Boisvert, and I think we're going to be calling her name out a lot this year.
Right.
She didn't produce to me in the scoring column as much as I thought she would last year when she played with Macy Tatro. They had that incredible 1-2 punch, and I could see Hannah really coming on as a 10th grader. She had a good season. She just didn't score as many points as I thought she would. But Coach Justin Krantz, I've got to be honest with you, he's one of those teams I was talking about a few minutes ago, Tim. He's in a total rebuild. Right. And it's going to take some time. You got to get kids into the program. And he's also got some younger kids, too. So he's got a JV program, and that's always good. When you don't, and you don't have much for the future. So he's playing the kids that should be out on the floor for him right now, and I like the league that they're in also. But they're going to have to find some scoring, and they're going to have to find a true ball handler. I only saw them so far in the Jamboree, but they'll be okay as they go on. But they're going to have to find some scoring somewhere. But with Hannah Boisvert, as tall as she is, she's probably around 5'10" or so.
Right.
And she plays really, really hard underneath. She works hard underneath the hoop, offensively and defensively. So they did have a 1-point lead against Ludlow, but just fizzled out, especially in the second half. But give Coach Krantz some time with these kids, and you'll see an improvement as the season goes on.
Right, and we'll be covering the girls coming up on our game of the week, and we'll give you the schedule of that. But I'm anxious to get down and see them. I think they're another team that's going to improve immensely as the season goes along, and they'll definitely be a better team towards the end of the season than they are right now. Quickly, Rick, we're going to talk about the Greylock girls. They did play a couple of games over the last week, and we'll talk about their game at Drury because you guys covered that, and we've got some highlights of that. But they stand at 2-3. They did lose to Belchertown, but they've been a little bit shorthanded lately.
Yeah, they were 2-1, and they lost their last 2 ball games by pretty wide margins. But I'm going to tell you why in a minute. They lost to Belchertown, 50-15. Mia Filio led the way with 9 points, and in a game that we recently did up there, John Franzoni and I, they lost at Drury 69-20. In that ball game, Phoebe Barnes led the way with 7. Kate Chelsea had 6. They played shorthanded. Now, when I say shorthanded, these are kids Coach John Jacoby would have had in the starting lineup.
Right.
Now, granted, they're still very young, except for Jackie Brannon, who I think is a senior. You've got Madison Drake, who's a junior,
Right.
Livy Eakin, either a 9th or 10th grader, and Tanley Drake, an 8th grader,
grader,
who I
right.
liked a lot in the Jamboree.
Absolutely.
You and I
Yes.
saw that,
Absolutely.
and I was
Very impressed
so
with her.
hopeful that I would see her play. But those 4 girls I just named were not in the box scores of the Belchertown game or in the Drury game. So Coach Jacoby had like 6 varsity players suited up last night up in Drury, and took a couple JV kids just in case that ended up getting in the game later on. But they'll be okay. They always do, but I hope the injuries are all minor from what I understand. Coach Vanzoni, doing the color commentary with me during that game, said he had talked to Coach Jacoby quite a bit, and he's very, very high in his kids. But they're very young, and with varsity experience, they're going to get better as the season goes on.
Hoosick Valley Hurricanes, Rick, the Lady Hurricanes, they're undefeated, 2-0 in a game, in our first high school game of the week, which was a doozy up in Cheshire. They beat South Hadley 48-42, and in fact, you can see that game following High School Basketball Weekly right here. We're going to have that game rebroadcast for you, but that was a great game and a great effort by the Hurricanes to come away with that victory.
Oh, we picked a good one to start the season up in Cheshire. That was a great ball game, and in that game, Tim, we talked a little bit about the long history of the Hurricanes and the South Hadley Tigers battling both in Cheshire and down there, and then the Coaches versus Cancer. They always have a respectable program, and they didn't disappoint. That was a great ball game. The Hurricanes ended up winning that game 48-42, and I got to tell you that except for the last 2 minutes of the first half, Tim, as you recall. Right. When Coach Frederick called timeout and went to a zone full court press, they put tremendous pressure on South Hadley, created many turnovers and points off those turnovers. Right. That ended up being the difference of the ball game. It was an even game all the way around,
absolutely,
offensively and defensively, probably in scoring and rebounding, and all the stats would be pretty close in all the way through. In that game. They were led by Ashlyn LaSure with 15 points, but our player of the game, and we had her on after the game, and you'll see that, ladies and gentlemen, after this program, was Emma Meswar.
So outstanding. She was everywhere on that floor in that game.
9 points and 15 rebounds.
Right. Very, very, very tough competitor. Never quit in her. They got a great effort out of Ashlyn LaSure.
Sure, going to take it down the lane and score. Absolutely sure.
Very, very talented. Handles the ball real well. And there you see Meswar there with that very strong move to the basket. And there's another senior, Abi Salaba, who had a nice game as well. But boy, everywhere you look, it was Emma Meswar all over the place.
Yeah, you're going to see another one coming up right here on a nice putback, Tim, off the glass.
Right.
But boy, does she battle.
Absolutely. And there you see LaSure again. And the thing about Meswar as well is very smart basketball player. I thought to play the game in a very close game. This was close here in the fourth quarter, Rick. Meswar had gotten the ball and was driving down the lane and got double teamed. She kicked it out to LaSure for an open three-pointer, and LaSure made that shot.
Yep.
But she was aware enough to kick out, and that really turned the game, pretty much closed the game out for Hoosick Valley.
I think it did, Tim, exactly, yeah, exactly.
So, congratulations to Hoosick Valley. Again, Emma Meswar, she was our player of the game in that first one, and we hope we have a lot of good games like that coming up for our game of the week. Drury Blue Devils, Rick, you covered them as they played. You indicated they played Greylock, but this young Blue Devils team, they've got a couple of wins now on the young season, and Coach Downey has to be somewhat satisfied.
Yeah, I think he is. I talked to him after the game, and as you and John reported on this show last week, Drury led by 4 at Agawam in their season opener, but got outscored 14-2 in the fourth quarter and ended up losing that ball game. But they did finally pick up their first win in Great Barrington against Monument Mountain, 44-34. And they outscored the Spartans 28-19 in the second half to kind of pull away just a little bit. It was a close ball game at halftime. Jacinta Felix led the way with 20 points, and Marley Brothers had 8. Nora Wood and Brooke Bishop each had 5. And then in a game that I mentioned, John Franzoni and I just covered up at the Bucky Bullet Gym, the Blue Devils knocked off Mount Greylock 69-20. Jacinta Felix with 23, Brooke Bishop had 12. But the key thing there, Tim, was that 11 different players for Drury scored. And they had 1 7th grader that got in the last 5 or 6 minutes, 2 8th graders and 3 9th graders, including the Hayden girls, who got a lot of time last night and saw significant minutes at varsity basketball. So they got a tough one coming up. They've got Wacona coming up. But you know, Coach Donnie was pretty happy. He's really, really happy that Springfield ICS is no longer in the Central.
Right. I think a lot of teams in Western Mass are happy about that because that's an outstanding team that he had to battle last year.
Yeah, so when that ball game is rebroadcast here on Northern Berkshire Community Television, make sure you check it out. As I said, Coach Jacoby just didn't have the players that he needed on the floor to compete last night. But Coach Downey was quoted, Tim, this morning by saying that he can be assured that will not be the same outcome the next time those two teams get together. When they're both healthy, it will be a much better ball game.
Over in Williamstown. We'll be looking forward to that game when it comes up on the schedule. But for her outstanding performance, Rick, for the Blue Devils in this early part of the season, our Girls Player of the Week, Jacinta Felix.
She did an outstanding job. She was all over the place last night, steal after steal.
Yeah, you see her, she's up front on that. She's up front on Coach Downey's press, and she handles the ball well. She shoots the ball well, Rick. She's going to be a handful for coaches to defend against, but there you see it. Jacinta Felix, she had a 20-point effort against Monument and followed that up with 23 points against Mount Greylock. And Coach Downey's going to need that scoring from her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's the quarterback. The ball is in her hands the majority of the time where it's safe. And her strength, she in an interview we did after the ball game, Tim, she has said that she does absolutely get as much joy in assisting and passing than she does in scoring. So she's always looking to set up her teammates, but she realizes that she has to be the scorer this year. She and Brooke Bishop have got to do the majority of the scoring because they have the floor experience. Right. They've got 2 or 3 years under their belts on the floor. So Coach Downey's kids, they're going to be okay. Right,
they certainly are. Their next game is December 28th against Wacona. That'll be a real test for the Blue Devils. Our upcoming high school game of the week, Rick, we're going to be up at Drury December 27th for the game between the Millionaires and the Blue Devils. Our first game at Drury for the Drury boys, December 27th. So that's going to be our high school game of the week next week. And we want to remind everyone that our games of the week will be rebroadcast right after High School Basketball Weekly. When we broadcast tonight's on Thursdays, the game will be on at 8 o'clock. It'll be back on the air at 10:30 on Saturday morning, and it'll be back as well 7:30 on Sunday evening, as well as other times. But you can definitely count on the broadcast of those games here following High School Basketball Weekly. That's going to do it for this week, Rick, on High School Basketball Weekly. The seasons are getting into full bore. Support your local high schools. We look forward to covering all the teams that we have here in Northern Berkshire County.